You are the holy grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search.
Welcome to the Woman Arising podcast, hosted by Cathy Hartenstein and Zeffi Devi, where we elevate and celebrate inspiring women on the rise. In this podcast, we talk to women from all walks of life about their soul's journey, the obstacles they overcame, and how they embody their feminine power. We hope to elevate women's place in the world, showcase their contributions, and provide inspiration for all women to rise to their fullest potential. Today, our guest is April Waldman, who has been a guide, healer, and teacher for 30 years. She loves walking the path to greater freedom and bliss, as well as experiencing her true nature and supporting others to do the same. She is the mother of 3 children and 2 cats, a musician, and loves to dance, adventure with her husband, and spends as much time in nature as possible. She is certified in non-dual therapy with a specialty in trauma, a Reiki practitioner, flower essence practitioner, a heart math intervention specialist, a Akashic Records reader, and founder and teacher of Hider Guidance Healing. She has studied Ayurveda, integrative somatic trauma therapy, and alchemal Egyptian healing, and completed training in Foundations in Body Talk Quantum Healing. She holds a master's in organizational development and executive coaching and leadership development from Pepperdine University, as well as a master's in quantum healing from the Diamond School of Healing. Welcome, April. It's our true pleasure to have you here today, as I know your work has been very connected to empowering women and that you're dedicated to helping women rise in multiple ways.
Thank you, Cathy. So nice to be here. Welcome. Thank you, Zeffi. I'm so happy and honored to have you with us today. And just heard your bio, and I didn't know that much about you, but that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. So, when you hear women arising, what do you think about that? What is it making you feel? And because I know you work with women, and what is that about for you when we say women rising?
Yeah, I love the emphasis on what does that make me feel? Because it's very exhilarating. It's very, I think the time we're living in now is something that I'll speak for myself, but I imagine you guys relate that this time has been prophesized about for many, many, generations, and we're living in this time where really woman or goddess is rising. And so for me, it's not just, it's so much more than woman, although woman is also, embodied as the goddess. So it's for me, the goddess rising, the divine feminine.
I agree with you because, it's been our work, as I heard for you 30 years. And for me also, it's been our work to help women to become the goddess, to honor their body as the temple. So I love your answer. Thank you. That's really amazing.
Yeah. One of the offerings I do is called Becoming the Goddess. So I would say that's really like the theme of everything I do. The theme of my whole life is really becoming the goddess. And it really, my life began that way. And so it's always been that way. In my work, and helping women to uncover their soul's journeys, where they've been in the experience of their soul, as well as, where they're going. I find helping them connect into those threads of places where they have lived in full memory of that embodiment is really something I love to help women do.
I love that idea of becoming the goddess. When you're talking about that, what does that mean to you and to become the goddess? Because I think that is a really important thing for us to understand, that we have that in us, that we can embody that is part of our lives. And teaching that and kind of embodying that for yourself, can you go a little deeper into what that means?
It definitely is something I think that is available. It's for men too. It's the goddess is that divine feminine energy, that life force. It's for me the manifested play of the universes. But it's waking up to that, and I feel like that's really what's happening, on the grand scale of everything. But, for me, I do work with women on their own individual path. And I mean, I do lead groups too, but it's really about helping each other to tap into that, into our true nature. And there's so many different spiritual lineages and philosophies that speak to this. And I could go in so many different directions, but really becoming the goddess is awakening your soul's memories. I feel like for so many of us, we've had these lifetimes where we were priestesses or we were these seers, or, many women that are attracted to this work. It's, I think, very powerful to help give a felt sense and a direct experience of those memories, but also like reweaving a whole new paradigm into what it means to live, like, why are we here? Kind of turning the paradigm inside out, right? Where we're not like inviting women into the possibility that that the happiness isn't necessarily going to come from achieving all the things and being out there in a more masculine way. It's more what I like to call the delightful self. It's like, having the courage to, of course, still be active in the world, but really the whole point of it is this deep experience with this like nectar of life, which is the more that you do and there's so many different self-care practices, so many different rituals, so many different things you can do to cultivate that. But that's mainly the essence, is like to live from your true nature, embody that felt sense that nectar or bliss is within your own being. There's different expressions of that. Each of us has our own expression of that goddess within.
I absolutely love that. And I think knowing you well, April, that you actually are a really good model for that in the world, and that you have, I know, spent a long portion of your life really cultivating that so that you can embody that in your life. And with that, I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today. So how did this sort of manifest for you? How did you get into the work that you do? And, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it is a lot about the feminine, and it is a lot about the wounds of the feminine. And, that's why I don't know if I was just born a healer or I chose to be a healer. I actually don't necessarily call myself a healer like out in the world. I don't say, oh, I'm a healer, but as we heal we're all healing ourselves. But really working with my different traumas and wounds as a gateway into the goddess. It's almost like seeing those experiences of trauma really as the doorway into her, and I would also be so bold. Since it's my story, I can talk about my story how I want, but I would say for myself, it was the initiation. It was like these different initiations that I had, that I'm grateful to have that lens with it, to really step out of any sort of victimization, to really look at that as something that these different experiences, around, sexual trauma and wounding of the feminine as my initiation into embodying the goddess. So that was kind of the doorway that my soul chose, and parts of that different awakenings of the goddess energy through those traumas. So, and it's interesting because part of my story also is that, any sort of pain or, trauma it cracks things open. And so, and when that cracked open for me, it was like the veil lifted. So in the most like challenging, hard moments of my life is also the incredible gift. And so that's really like what I help guide women through, like working through their own challenges as that their own, it's in a kind of like an evolution of their own soul's journey, and kind of like a knock at the door if they want to or not,
I know. And I think trauma is a big initiation a lot of the time, because it forces us to heal ourselves and deal with, things and overcome. And that leads me to my next question for you, which is, what were some of those major obstacles that you had to overcome that kind of helped shape and define you? And, what were the things that you were drawn to along that way? Like, how did you actually carve that path out to kind of become what you've become? What were some of the moments?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's interesting. If I look back, it's like I didn't necessarily know. I knew deep within myself, right, that the path was there. But when you're in that moment of, darkness or being lost, or like you don't really know, like, will this really work, or are these intuitions I'm having really real, or you're just kind of like throwing darts at, at least that's how it felt for me. How do I get out of this? And so, having the early childhood trauma, which is kind of what cracked things open for me, I feel like a blessing that came through that was my clairvoyance opened up at that point. And I think it's part of the rising of the energy. Also, it opened up some abilities for me. So I was able to have a direct communication with my guides from that point on. Although it was there was a lot of twinging between these amazing, miraculous experiences of feeling like everything's okay and I'm so loved, and nothing else matters other than this amazing love. And then coming out of it and feeling like, is this all, where did my guides go? You know what I mean? And kind of being in my, kind of living in two worlds at the same time, and that being incredibly confusing, and also just what was happening in my life, but always feeling like I had this kind of like tether to a greater reality and maybe a greater truth and guidance. And it was really that guidance from an early age. I feel like that when I look back was kind of like this golden thread that if I listened to that guidance, the next thing would unfold. But, going through, like my teenage years, and having this pain I needed to work through, grew up in Eugene, Oregon. It's a lot of psychedelics, and drugs were very, very just a part of the culture. So, where I grew up, it was, we partied, and that definitely became an addiction for me. So when I was 29, I ended up getting sober. So I've been sober now for 20 years. And yeah, I mean, there's just so much. I mean, it almost feels like my whole life was leading to really living as the goddess. It was all these different, like I said, these different initiations. And part of the way I made my way through was I loved dancing. So I got into a lot of, just different dance communities, and in the in the early 90s. And that was like my life for like 10 years. And that was like although I was, still working a lot out for myself, that was a very rich time for me to connect with dance as a way to heal, ecstatic dance, expression, meeting lots of different people all up and down the West Coast, having this whole community of just kind of like, I feel like unwinding souls, lifetimes of experiences, like we're talking about the woman arising. I mean, there's just been thousands of years of repression and forgetting and erasing of the memories. And I feel like I had a pulse on that. And so it was definitely that 10-year period of unwinding, shaking all that off. I feel like was very, very rich for me.
Well, and I think it's really interesting because, like you discussed this early childhood trauma and how that opened up this clairvoyance and this higher guidance, which I think is interesting because that is the name of some of the work that you do. And that connection at that young age, but then as you kind of matured, having that search of the ecstatic in a lot of ways through the dance, maybe through the drugs, and now to just be able to tap into that on your journey. And you talked a little bit about, how women have been a little bit oppressed through that, and that this reclaiming that for you was really important. And I guess that leads me to my next question, which is really, we do see this kind of sexism. We don't see the divine feminine really being expressed as wholly as it could be in society. We are kind of dealing with this patriarchy. And, I'm curious about how you see that really manifesting in the world, and if there were any times in your life where you experienced that.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I don't focus on it as much because I'm so focused on the liberation, you know? And then also when I touch into that patriarchy, I mean, even just what happened to me in my stories, I feel like part of that, my whole life. It's a very big theme, but it's interesting as you ask that question. I don't focus on it a lot. Although when I was drinking more, I had incredible, and I've had a lot of rage to work through, and a lot of grief, not only for myself, but just for, what's happened, and, and the temples are gone, and something that I was born knowing so deeply within myself is, memories of, libraries of knowledge and in the temples and all, and even just stories, like when I bring it up to people, they might be talking about, stories of, say, the Oracle of Delphi, like this is the way it was. And I have direct memory that actually, did you know that, it was the priestesses, you know what I mean? And just even like it's like, there's just a lot to uncover. There's a lot to heal and a lot to uncover. And so I've definitely had my own rage with that. So what I've done with it really is use it as, it's been an incredible poison, I suppose, that I feel like I've chosen to digest and turn it into nectar. That's kind of been my path. It's like, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. It wasn't like I had a choice. It was like a very fine razor line edge of like, either I'm going to fall into like this victimization and being angry at what's happened, and even what continues to happen, but it's a continual training to listen to what it triggers within myself and do that work, digest it within myself, and then bring that nectar back into the system, into my interactions. So that's how I choose to deal with it, because I feel like the other side of it, it almost like would have destroyed me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. That like you feel that oppression almost personally, it sounds like, because you see what has been lost in that, because you have that direct connection, which is really powerful. Not everybody does, right? And so that you're been dedicated to then resurrecting almost what was there, which is very powerful.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting to hear it reflected back, but it is like something I feel like, yeah, I'm focused on all the time. And it's so rewarding. Something I had to learn as part of the journey too was that, a teaching that I chose to work with is that it's all the goddess, and that she's, there's so much mystery, right? That not understanding all of it, right? I don't claim to understand all of it, but, that these different places of pain within myself, or, and in the external world is a reflection of myself, that it's all her. I mean, she's doing her dance. And so learning at a more advanced level how to lean into that and work with that and trust, and kind of let go of any disempowering ideologies about the way the world is, and how I personally relate to that, what my vision is as I see that, because I do know that as I'm doing my own work and I come into the world, it looks different. And so it's almost just like infusing all of it with that goddess nectar and bliss and love. And that, for me, that feels like the work. I know there are other people that do it at there's so many different levels, right? That we need to, but that there's opportunities to work with. But that's been my path, is just kind of digesting the poison and then placing it back into the world with that nectar.
Well, you touch upon so many things that feels so dear to me. And your work is, I feel it is really amazing because, you talked about the oracles of Delphi, and you talked about the poison turning into nectar. And that is what the goddess is about, correct? She is that. We have to take all the poison in. And if we can transmute it to nectar or to transmute it, then we can be her. And that's, that's been the work for me too. But more, I want to go back for you. When we really talk about the divine feminine within you, and I know you can transform the poison into bliss and nectar. How does that feel? Because I love to talk about feelings. I separate emotions and feelings, correct? That's personally me. So how do you feel when you embody her? I just get chills as I'm asking this question. So, and I know you can embody many of them simultaneously. That's what I've been feeling as you've been talking. So how does that feel when you embody all of them? And I'm sure you use each one of them for the right reasons when you need her and whatever, but just tell me something about that.
Yeah, but when you say embody them, you mean goddesses? Different goddesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the digestion, in like living my life, really getting out of the stories, right? Because I feel like the stories are a huge obsession, and you can just get stuck right into that. And maybe that's what you're inviting me to do too, right? Like go deeper underneath the story. And because there are different levels in which you can talk about this, and anybody that's listening can try this on for themselves as I'm talking, to get that experience. But it is the felt sense, right? Which is her, as I feel into my day, or let's say there's a trigger, right? And one of the biggest triggers, one of the periods of time I worked with this the most was during COVID. And my husband was out of work for about a year, and I have 3 kids. So my twins were 4. I think they were 4. Yeah, I think they were 4. And then I had a 9-year-old, 8-year-old. Maybe they were 6. They were 5. So, but we were all home together, and I was going through different parts of my awakening process, which were very, very intense. I wasn't able to eat food for about 2 years. I couldn't really digest food. I was going through this very intense time. And so it was almost like so many things were triggered all at once, so many challenges. And I found my rage coming back. Like and maybe I was in a place where I could handle it. So I was like welcoming it in, and I worked with a guide, and she really helped me just, feel the rage, just like lean into it and like really feel that felt sense of rage, or whatever trigger had happened. And as I did that and went into different parts of my body and just keep welcoming and really seeing her as that rage as forms of the goddess burning through me, it was so interesting. And I know it's like this with any sort of frequencies, right? Everything's frequencies, but there's different wavelengths of frequency. So it would be like I'd be feeling this feeling of intense heat, of like being swallowed, being drowned, like this burning through my body, or or maybe places of numbness. And then I would do that, it would all of a sudden, right when I felt like I couldn't handle it, there'd be like an edge, and then I would decide to go further, or there'd be an invitation, and it would just drop into something totally different. It's like going into a new land within myself. And at one point I remember it opened into ecstasy. I went from like this feeling of hatred and rage, and some of it was directed at my husband at the time. He'd be okay with me saying that, but like it was just like triggering so much. And even right now I'm aware of even how much more it was triggering, but just feeling into those triggers, digesting that poison from a very felt sense. And then it did drop into this feeling of ecstasy. And when I say that, it feels like different colors or shapes kind of rippling, like a felt, like the energy has a more geometric color felt sense. And so since then, I've learned that, these, and this is some of the non-dual therapy work I got into, which I got into at that time, is that, there's obviously these dualities, right? And if you're willing to feel the full spectrum of the duality, from pain to pleasure, you go back and forth, then eventually there's a true nature within that will come through, which is bliss. But the way to do it is not through the mind, it's through feeling deeply and being willing to fully, I would die for this. Like that was kind of the way I would, that's kind of what it's felt like. It's felt like, this real intensity. And it comes from this deep yearning, right? It's like this yearning to awaken and remember and to live my life from who I really am, not from this place of just like mundane. Although now I realize the mundane, it's all within the all, right? I mean, I can feel, you could bring it into everything. So.
Well, that's the true essence of the divine feminine, correct? We have to go through the rage. We have to shift that rage inside of us, because it's been many thousands of years that we suffered through this. And of course, I think this is a perfect time for us to live and to do this work. I'm so blessed to know that I'm here right now. I'm sure you do too, because we're shifting a lot of things. We're changing a lot of things. We're becoming the goddesses, and we embody her in such a way that it just gives us this power of, and it's not a bad power, but is our true self. The power of our true self. That's the best way I can explain it. So, I thought, what would you say to women, like just an advice of when they get into this rage, when they're ready to shift all that? What would be an advice that you will give them? Because they need, we all need to feel safe when we go through this craziness, correct? Through this rage, and we need to feel safe. So what would be an advice?
I mean, I would say I wouldn't have been able to do it without a guide myself, because, and I know a lot of things, like I've studied a lot of healing modalities, and but somebody who can help make it come alive and really hold the space. And that person is probably somebody who's done the work themselves. So they're not afraid. They know like what it really is. They can see all the way through it. Because it really is, like these doorways, right? So I think that would be, I mean, just at a practical level, just, and classical Tantra teaches a lot about that. And now in psychology, like internal family systems is talking about this. It's really like catching on culturally everywhere that there really is no like bad or good feeling, that it's all like really for you, right? And it's like so changing your narrative around what feelings are, and then having like you could think of it like if you want to try it yourself, you could just have like an inner ceremony for yourself, light a candle, create a space, and really a guide can be that for you, or you can create that space for yourself with lighting a candle, getting your journal out, preparing yourself to hold that space for yourself. So where you're going to witness, you're going to want to witness yourself feeling into these feelings and this is the part I find that most people get stuck, is that if you go into the story of it, it will loop and you'll get stuck in whatever feeling is within the thought form. And I like to look at the thought form as like if you could see the energetic field, the thought form is it's like the casing around the emotion, and it can have a vibration, a color. And so we're so used to being inside of that frozen thought form that's been there for so long, and every time we feel into it, it gets more and more power. So the work is really being able to hold a larger container, be willing to not believe the thought form or the story, and then go on. And it's almost like surfing, where you're going to go then underneath what does it feel like underneath that, and then you're going to really feel that like you're tasting, like you're eating chocolate or you're tasting wine, or you're really like with all your senses digesting that, and you're just willing to feel without any expectation. And that was hard for me because I'm like, well, let's get to the bliss. Okay. That's you have to just surrender to whatever is there. And typically I'm surprised by then what comes out. I don't know exactly what's going to come. So, and I wouldn't do it for too long in the beginning, maybe 10 minutes, and then you have these different practice, and then as you get stronger and able to hold that space for yourself, without getting lost, you can do it for longer periods, maybe 20 minutes.
So the actual thing is becoming conscious of our feelings, correct? Becoming conscious of what's really happening and just bring it in front of us. Would that be like a little simple thing someone can do without having a guide, say, for example, or not? But I agree with healers. I think we need to go to a guide and go, to go with that. But I think a lot of people are having a hard time bringing the feelings into the surface for them to be conscious. Would you agree on that?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the work I do is on Zoom, and I feel like it would be so easy just to talk the whole session. Like usually we'll talk for like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes max. My sessions are 75 minutes, but then it's like, okay, now let's drop in. And that's really where it all happens, is where you drop into the interior landscape of your soul. And there's so much there. There's guides, there's helpers, there's, so much can open up there in terms of resources. And that's really what the feelings are, a resource. And I think for a lot of people, it can be hard just to name the feeling, so that can be even a start too, to have like a feeling chart, right? And just be like, okay, I'm feeling this. So that, start there. But then actually to really feel the felt sense of the feeling, that's really where that's where you're digesting it. When you're turning that poison to that nectar, it's so natural, right? Kids do it all the time. They're masters.
Well, and I've worked with you and studied with you, April, and one of the things that we learned in your course was about like returning that imprint to love. And it sounds like that is along those lines, where you just keep going deeper and deeper into that feeling and letting it be absorbed and transformed and finding that place of bliss that's sort of on the other side of that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me personally, like it's really bliss, but that like true nature experience could be many things for different people. Like I know some clients it's very much about peace, or safety even, it can be like feeling nourished, feeling held. It can be many different, true nature has a lot of expressions as well. Although I would say mine was bliss. That's like, I think what I was looking for, right? And those ecstatic experiences.
Totally. But I love how the conversation has really taken us to, that embodiment and what that looks like, and the many shapes and forms of that, and the power behind that. And as I'm, thinking about this, for women who kind of want to step onto this path, what would be, the advice you would give them? What do you wish somebody maybe had told you at a young age? The one sort of thing that maybe would make a big difference, that, as we have progressed in our lives and sort of learned a lot of lessons, how do we share that with people who are stepping onto this path?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I think for me, it's really the guidance, and I love teaching people to tap their intuition and what I like to call a higher guidance. But we all have it, right? We all have a right brain. We all have an energy field. We're all souls. We're like spirits in a body. It's so natural. Everything is vibration, and we're feeling everything all the time. And so like, but many times it's not developed, right? It's not encouraged or developed to listen to that part. And of course, as women, we have strong intuition. And just a side note that I want to add in here before I forget it is that something I was really surprised about was I learned that you know, at least in the tradition that I follow, Kashmir Shaivism, they believe that the women actually have a easier capacity to awaken, and a lot of it has to have to do with our menses cycles and the way that we hold more prana. We are prana holders, and so it's actually very easy for us to awaken. And I feel like that was part of the fear of, we can hold a lot of power, we can hold prana is power, it's life force. So, so I think that's an important thing I wanted to add. But it's just listening to your guidance, because typically when you talk to people and they're like, oh, I don't know about that, or I haven't had any experiences with guides or angels, and then you'll talk to them for like 10 minutes and they're like, oh, I had this experience where I almost drowned and this angel came, or like, but it doesn't fit into their worldview daily. So it kind of gets put back in the pocket. And that's what happened to me too. I kind of put my experiences back on a shelf until then later in my life, it came back. So if people can start to wonder, really get into their heart and be in that place of wonder, like, if I did have a guide, or if I was fully clairvoyant and my intuition was totally developed, what is it that what guidance would I be getting about my life? Because the guidance is there all the time with as that, still small voice, that whisper, and it will guide you to where you need to go, which, and it's not linear, but it's like really trusting that, listening to that, and getting out of the left brain and into nature when you're playing, when you're dancing, and then ask, what does my guidance say about this, and just really, and then trust it, really listen to it and start taking action from that guidance. Cause I think that's like, it kind of, cuts through so much, and it's something that we all have. And the more you listen to it, the louder it will get. And the more, just kind of starts to build more and more power. But
I think that's a powerful reminder, because I think sometimes, like you said, we get caught up in that story or whatever, and we forget that there's all this information at our fingertips that is connected to us, that sort of full self that you're talking about, which is really powerful. So my last question to you is, I've worked with you. I cannot sing your praises high enough. It's very powerful work. How can people connect with you, get in touch with you, and what are things that maybe are coming up that you might want people to know about that you're working on?
yeah, so I have a website, dahliatransformation.com. I offer packages for one-on-one healing. I really, I've been doing this since the 90s, and I remember the women that I trained with, it was just an offering, and it was something that for me, I was able to buy these packages. It was something that I could afford and integrate into my life. And so I've really kept that value system of offering pricing and one-on-one work that is something that anybody can do, and so there's the healing packages, and or also I teach the higher guidance training right now, either as apprenticeship, or if I get enough inquiry, then I'll create a course. But right now I'm doing it as an apprenticeship. And then after you do the higher guidance course, some people want to do the higher guidance healing, which is a training in learning to do the work that I do. So it's a combination of everything I've learned and the best of the best, and my own direct experiences within that. And a lot of it is about cultivating that, what psychology would call the self, or that true nature. That's really at the root of it. And then looking at your personal obstacles as doorways to embody more of the goddess, more of that power.
And I've taken the higher guidance healing training, and it is really astounding what April has put together. She really has combined all of this goddess work with the non-dual work and sacred geometry and meditative practices and shamanic work. It's really an amazing wealth of different modalities all sort of combined into this really beautiful practice. So if you're looking for something, I can't recommend it highly enough. And I've also worked one-on-one with April, and it's been very life transformational. So she's very powerful to work with. So I give you my highest recommendation. Anyway, it has been such a pleasure to have you here with us today, April. It's really great to hear about your journey and hear about all of the different ways in which you do follow your higher guidance to that blissful state. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for tuning in to Woman Arising, where we celebrate the resilience, wisdom, and power of women on the rise. Remember, when women rise, we all rise. If you're ready to embark on your journey of empowerment, sign up for our mailing list at womenarising.com and join our community of strong, inspiring women. To connect with Zeffi Devi and ignite your inner fire, visit zeffidevi.com and sign up to get your free tantric meditation. Let Zeffi illuminate your path, helping you discover the magic and power that reside within you. To connect with Cathy Hartenstein and claim your spectacularness, visit createmorebliss.com and sign up for a free 30-minute consult call where she can help you break through your emotional blocks to success. Let Cathy be your guide on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you for being a part of the Woman Arising community. Together, let's continue to uplift, inspire, and empower women everywhere. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and keep embracing the divine feminine power that resides within you.
You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer.